Of course, you and I know categorically clearly that, it is World International Teachers Day. We are celebrating the teachers. The whole of last week, from Monday to Friday, I was holding interviews or moderations courtesy of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. And we're talking about what are some of those teacher gaps that are jeopardizing a full recovery of the education system. We all do know that teachers are at the heart of the education system, but then many of them have been battered by COVID-19. Many of them have succumbed. Yes, they've contracted COVID-19 and they've died. So in Uganda here, if we are talking about 550,000 teachers, well, it should be also clear that that number might have reduced because of those factors that I have mentioned. But then these are the same individuals at the heart of the education recovery. So if such factors are still pretty much taking center stage, what would that mean? And would it affect a full recovery or jeopardize the same education recovery in that regard? To have the conversation expounded on, I have Marilyn Mungereza. She is the country manager, Aggakhan Foundation. She's here with me. Also, Rosette Nanyanzi from the Ministry of Education and Sports. We're going to be having this very pertinent conversation on World Teachers Day. When and why do we celebrate World Teachers Day? I'll start with you. Very good morning.
Good morning to you.
Indeed.
It's a very important day. We celebrate this annually on the 5th of October.
All right.
Since 1966, really out of ILO and UNESCO conventions. Indeed. To just appreciate the value that the role of, the role of teachers.
Indeed.
There are a number of principles that we look at when we're celebrating teachers.
All right.
We consider how they are prepared. They are going to prepare the next generation, so they have to be prepared properly. What conditions are they working under? How are they recruited? How are they employed? Are the conditions suitable to facilitate their teaching? So that's really what we celebrate this very important day.
Of course, with all the questions you've been fronting, you're just opening another Pandora box, another Pandora box. Are we prepared? The teachers at the heart of it, because it's actually unequivocally clear that we are not prepared for a full reopening, because teachers have been wallowing in poverty during this COVID-19 pandemic. Some have, contracted and succumbed. So if we are talking about 500,000 teachers, it should be around 300,000. So what are we doing to create more teachers and so forth? So teachers at the heart of the education recovery. That is the theme. What do we mean when we say education recovery?
Well, education recovery is, we've been out of school for 2 years.
Indeed.
A portion of actually the entire secondary education is really more or less private, private sector provided.
Indeed, around 61%.
Yes, so if all of secondary is private sector, primary at least has a lot of government.
58%.
Yes, that means that which business can survive for 2 years?
Indeed.
Who could be paying salaries for 2 years? That means that a big number of that workforce has not been earning an income and has had to find something else to do.
I hear you.
The question is, are they ready to come back? Would they come back? Will the schools be there for them to come back to anyway? Because these are private schools, for example. Government has done a fantastic job.
Indeed.
They've been able to maintain the payroll, and those teachers will go back to school, we hope.
For the public institutions.
For the public institutions, correct.
Indeed.
So we have to ask ourselves if we are operating at maybe 60% of the schools in total.
I know your concern is, what about those in the private institutions who have not been largely getting a check for the last 18 months? How sure are we that they will come back to the fold?
But will the schools be there? The other question, they are private businesses. They've been closed for 2 years. Will they have a place to come to at the end of this? So it's really a worrying situation. I don't think there's a precedent for that. So we are really trying to do our best to work with the various stakeholders to support the government, to prepare those that we can, to say, with you in the community. Even while COVID was going on and schools were closed, we're trying to invest in certain initiatives to help them to continue to be relevant in the community. Teachers made comments to the effect that in the community people are saying, we thought you were very important people, but now you're doing nothing.
Indeed.
And so the esteem of the teacher has not been, has dropped. They've had to find other things to do. It's a tough question.
Well, of course, it's a tough question because then you do have experts who have been coming in the whole of last week and during this whole pandemic saying teachers are the most important people within this country. But then we are still seeing our budget only allocating 2% of, money going to the education system. That is way below the international benchmark of 20 to 30%. Now, aren't you worried, Rosette Nanyanzi, when you look at such factors that they'll, Damping our resolve to ensure a full recovery of the education system. Even the issue of funding, only 2% is going to education against the recommendation of 20 to 30%. When you look at jurisdictions of Kasese, schools have been turned into kraals for cattle. Residents are rearing their cattle within this jurisdiction. Solar panels that would have helped students to continue their learning when we fully reopen have been stolen, not only in Kasese, but many other areas. All these factors put together help us paint a picture of the current teaching and learning shifts caused by this pandemic.
I think as a country,
Indeed,
COVID has presented opportunities, but also very many challenges to the education sector.
Indeed.
First of all, when we went into the first lockdown, the aspect we thought about was mainly around ensuring continuity of learning. Some of the things were not taken into consideration in our planning. And we thought that if children have the learning materials, then everything is going to be okay. And we thought that maybe this would be for a short period, but this has continued now for 2 years. And as a country, I think this is a challenge on the side of the planners, but also on the side of the sector. We need to be able to mobilize more resources to make sure that, one, we look at the environment where the children are coming to. That has to be taken into consideration. We need to look at the learning environment. We need to look at our teachers. We need to look at the children that are returning. But also, there are opportunities that have come with this. Initially, digital resources were not being appreciated. But now we have seen that I think this is the way to go. I don't think COVID, as much as we are talking about reopening next year, COVID is not going to go away within next year. So as a country, there is an opportunity to take advantage of the digital resources.
But then the question would be how widespread these, the digital technological advancements.
More investment to be able to make sure that children, at least the urban can afford, but the children in the lower setting, there is no electricity, no radio, no TV.
Internet.
So as a country, that is already a burden that we have to face. Then the other challenge that we have, our parents have given up. Much as we are saying we have the universal primary education program, but there are also other costs that come with this education. School feeding, for instance. Are the parents ready to feed? And if this child has been away for 2 years feeding at home, and you're returning them and you're not able to contribute towards school feeding.
That's only part of the problem. There's also the issue of just, ensuring the well-being of the child.
The well-being.
In the school and then at home, but if I was grappling at home and then I have to take care of the child at school, it's going to be double jeopardy for those parents.
So it is actually a very big challenge that we are faced with as a country. But I think
and school fees for those in private institutions.
Yes. So, but all is not lost. I think if we work together with our partners, we work together with the district, local government, if we worked together with the communities and discuss how best do we return to school, as well as taking into consideration all these other challenges that we have, I think as a country can be able.
You said something about parents giving up, and indeed you're right, especially for those within the rural settings. They've actually just said, let's just give up on this issue, and it has led to child labor taking center stage, teenage pregnancies taking center stage, and it also compounded the significance of keeping children in school as the safest space for them, especially girls. Go ahead.
So when we say we need to engage all the different stakeholders, I think it's what we need to do. The parents need to know that they have a role to play as far as the education of their children is concerned, but also as far as their protection is concerned. The reason as to why we have these issues of pregnancy, child labor, it's because the parents have not been there in the position, or they have been challenged and they cannot continue parenting. But if we went back to the basics of parenting, we'll be able to achieve. Then when it comes to our schools, the sector should be able to prepare the teachers.
I see.
We should be able to prepare the teachers, and these efforts have already been started. We know that most of them have been challenged. There are people who have never worked anywhere and they know just the classroom. And for 2 years they're out of school. So we need to prepare them psychologically.
Have you been recruiting more teachers to ensure that you cover the gap of those who actually left the profession?
Of course, right now we can't be sure how many we have lost. That is why if immediately after reopening, we need to do a comprehensive study to assess how many teachers we've lost.
Don't you think we should be holding that study right now so that we don't grapple with that challenge when we fully reopen? Then you're like, okay,
I think
we have one teacher per 200
I think at this time it's really difficult to be able to,
I see.
because the schools are not opened yet. So teachers can have still continue doing whatever they are doing, especially those in private schools. But when the schools reopen, then we'll be able to assess within 1 week, have we been able to realize all the numbers that we had before the closure of the schools.
And of course, Marilyn Mungereza, this is what we mean by factors that could jeopardize the full recovery of the education system. The fact that we do not have data on how many of the teachers have been affected so that we go out there and help them. We might end up with a situation whereby we fully reopen, but there are no teachers to teach the learners in that
has
regard.
Taken some efforts. For instance, the private schools, we recently conducted a head counting of our private teachers for purposes of being able to support them, much as the support has not yet reached them, but at least there are efforts to see that we know who are these teachers, where are they, and what can we be able to do to support them.
Of course, there's a stimulus package of 22 billion Uganda shillings, and it would come,
those are
come with the head,
that are already taken, but still a comprehensive study after the reopening of school is also
that is fair enough. So which challenges, Marilyn Mungereza, did you encounter as you embarked on these support initiatives to help the education system fully recover during this pandemic? Talk to us about some of those barriers. She has mentioned what government was grappling with.
We were surprised by some of these. We conducted some studies as we're implementing some sort of gender-focused education programs in West Nile. We talked to these young people, and they don't want to go back to school.
Wait.
For economic reasons, and we're discussing this just outside here. Some of these young people tell you that instead of staying in my household with my 7 siblings and 10 other relatives, I'd rather go and start my own little family with this one person and move on with my life. So some of these teenage pregnancies are
below 18.
Yes, and they've
saying
selected that I would rather go and start my own life and have my own independence and be the woman of the house. It's shocking, but these are young people telling us that they are making these decisions purposely. Young men are telling you, but I'm a fisherman. I'm going to make money. What do I want in school? After all, I'm going to school to learn how to make a living. If I'm already making this living, there's a difficult sell of the value of education to young people, and we're shocked. And it's hard to come back to such a person.
Child labor is taking root.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And it's not that they're being forced by their parents. They have tested.
After 2 years.
They've tested the money, they've tested independence. You have some little money in your pocket and you can go to the trading center and find your own independence.
So the more we persist with this continued closure of schools, more children are dropping out.
Yes, the value is, it's a hard sell right now, a very hard sell.
But of course this compounds another glaring fact, Mungereza, that there's a gap between the wealthy and the poor that is actually widening each and every day. We are talking right now about students who are not in school, others are sitting for exams.
Correct.
You do know of this. Talk to us about that gap that is widening and other challenges.
I mean, education is a resource-intensive activity.
I see.
It takes many years. The parent has to be committed, the parent has to have the resources. The child, as we are seeing, also has to buy into this.
Indeed.
If your father is a lawyer and he tells you go to school and be a lawyer like me, you can see the vision. You can hang in school for 18 years and add on 4 years of law school and whatever. If your father is working in the garden, it's very difficult for him to sell to you a vision to commit to education. When even graduates come back to the village and get stuck.
Indeed.
So we have a very hard time selling that, but we're trying our best to tell them that education gives you options. Hang in there. Try to delay the family, starting this family. If you're a young lady, try to delay that because there will be better outcomes for your child, you know, if you can make this investment. So we really have a lot of work that we're trying to do in the communities to sell to the young people this vision, to sell to the parents that commitment, hang in there, keep investing in this child, something good could come of it.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right. We also do know that teachers have been away from the profession for the last 18 months. And would like to know, or you, to help us paint a picture of what they've been grappling with during this COVID-19 pandemic. Go ahead. The plight they've had to undergo.
Of course, teachers, like any other Ugandan, have been affected, like our shopkeepers in Chikubu also lost business. Indeed. So equally, the teachers have been affected. It has been hard, especially for the teachers in private schools. that have not been earning. For the teachers in public schools, at least their salary has been coming, and that has given them assurance that at least there is hope. But now for this private teacher, many of them have gone into other businesses, others we've seen many of them making bricks, others selling chapati, others into other businesses.
Indeed.
So that as a country, I think it is putting us at a disadvantage that we need to bring them back.
Another factor that will jeopardize
they are
already
challenged. Maybe my advice to the teachers that are out there, I think they need to take advantage of the different economic empowerment programs under government. This could be useful. Of recent, we had Myoga, we have the youth livelihoods, there are so many. So as a teachers in the communities, when I was growing up, my father was a teacher, and any knowledge around whatever was taking place in the community, it was always the teacher. So I still encourage them that they should look out for those opportunities, and as they are working, they should not do those things that will degrade them. Much as we need to make sure that we make ends meet, you should always be mindful that I'm a teacher. My father is a retired teacher, but up to now there are certain things you cannot do. You cannot drink in public, you cannot, misbehave in the community.
You need to live an exemplary
So
life.
the teachers should be encouraged to live an exemplary life.
But here is the reality on the ground. Now you have traumatized teachers, you have traumatized students. How do we prepare both, the teachers and students who are traumatized alike, to ensure that they are prepared for a full reopening?
We are prepared as a sector. We've been able to have psychosocial training and counseling so that these teachers are prepared, one, to return, but also to be able to address the challenges that young people come back with. And to that effect, the whole of last year, but also the beginning of this year, we have been conducting psychosocial trainings with these teachers. And when we are training, we are not only looking at public teachers, but also teachers in private schools. And I think this is also helping them. We have engaged them on how to receive these children that have been challenged. And we know very well that we have, much as all teachers are responsible for the children, but we have specifically also trained the senior women and the senior men teachers, because most of the challenges that our children come back with to school will be handled by the senior woman and the senior man teacher. So those ones have been given a special dose again to make sure that they prepare to receive children that have been challenged.
I see.
But we know, this has been going on for 2 years, but recovery will be a gradual process.
Indeed.
Very gradual.
All right.
So we have to take those steps that be mindful that we have been away for 2 years.
Marilyn Mungereza is the country manager of Aggakhan Foundation, Uganda. Over the years, it's not a secret, Aggakhan Foundation has been fully immersed in initiatives, activities, if you will, that go a long way in supporting the education system and also teachers alike. But then what we want to know, what are you currently doing to support the same during this universally heinous COVID-19 pandemic?
We've been doing some work with the Ministry of Education together with partners at NCDC. We supported preparation of back-to-school packages.
Indeed.
These are resources for the teachers, resources for the parents, resources for the school management committees, and also for the young people, because everybody has had a different challenge during this, and to help them to be able to go back, managing the psychosocial, managing the concerns. What is this COVID thing that kept me out of school for all this time? When I go back to school and they tell me don't share things with my friend, what does that mean? So try and provide those resources for the different categories of the stakeholders to enable a safe return to school. We've also supported a number of schools, actually with, beyond the resource, the software, also with the hardware. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to have to wash your hands, keep social distancing, have those messages around the schools. We provided these to over 100 schools in West Nile.
I see.
And trying to provide those, the hard and the soft as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you are in the West Nile and you're doing great work, because we did actually conduct a survey around Oyam, and the learners couldn't count from 1 to 10. That is P4. And we were like, no. Schools have to reopen as soon as yesterday. How is it possible that a primary 4 learner who should be taught talk about starting reproduction and so forth, knowing biology about themselves. No, 1 to 10. Numeracy levels were going down. Literacy levels were going down. And of course, I wasn't surprised when you said some of these learners are not willing to go back into the school system because they had largely not gotten or gotten used to what was happening in their lives, child labor and so forth. Others wanting to be teen mothers. But largely, go ahead, these interventions.
We've also continued interventions right from the early childhood level, where you'd be learning the 1 to 10, because learning, it erodes with time. If you don't compound and build on it, it erodes. You forget. So we've been trying to provide this supported continued learning while they're at home, on the radio, work packages delivered to the home. Even at the secondary level, we worked with we piloted some activities with teachers in the community, female teachers, to provide some groups, some small sort of learning pods for secondary level for girls, because again, when they come back, they'll be at another disadvantage. These are going to be these were candidates at the time. We provided some support for them, and those who are the semi-candidates who are going to be ready to a short time and you're ready for exams. So we've been trying to provide that remedial learning, those resources, including, simple things like even just the books and the materials, and also for menstrual health, because the girls still have these challenges. So providing those kits, providing them those resources, and providing the teachers support for those who were able to be in the sub-counties that we worked in. They provided that support, and I think the community, I hope, appreciated that. And so that the teacher remains a teacher. Even when the school is closed, a teacher is a resource. They have the knowledge. How can we provide them an environment in the community so they can continue to do this teaching work even outside the school?
Indeed. So why are you only in the West Nile region?
Yes, in West Nile, but also in Central. Some of our interventions, especially for early learning, were in Central region.
Early learning is important because you do have the Minister of Education, the Minister of Education and Sports, who is saying right now that those who missed out on pre-primary, that is kindergarten, they'll go straight to primary 1. Now, those efforts you are doing to ensure that some of these learners get some of the information before they make it to primary 1 is really, really important. It will be callous having a primary 1 student who can't really read from 1 to 10.
Correct.
Indeed.
And we're making those investments from the ECD level, but also at the early P1, P2, P3, because this will be, they'll be running sort of parallel grades. Those who had done some pre-primary, those who had done nothing, but they're now in P1. So we'll be providing some of those that support to those teachers and those institutions that will be receiving these young people who are not prepared at all for primary.
All right. When some of the experts talk about teacher gaps that might jeopardize a full recovery of the education system, they largely talk about the inexistence of female teachers, especially in the rural settings. Female teachers largely, relate very well with the young learners who are female, especially the girls, and they help in the retention of girls in the education system. And many say that in jurisdictions where you do not have female teachers, there are high rates of dropouts, especially in the parts of the girls. Is that true? And is that the gap that is missing in our recovery right now?
True. I mean, we have many gaps, as we've just noted, but that's one of the critical ones. But what we're doing, whether a teacher is male or female, we want to remove that distinction. We're making investments for the pre-service and in-service teachers. We're working together with Chambogo and others to create a curriculum for gender-responsive pedagogies. Because we want the teachers to be able to, whether you're a male teacher or a female teacher, when you're dealing with this young adolescent girl or this young adolescent boy, be able to provide them the support and the environment that allows them and nurtures them to learn. So we want to provide that training so that the distinction can be removed. That even if you're a male teacher, you have the tools and the knowledge to handle this girl correctly so that she can be comfortable, even though there are only 2 out of 12 teachers who are female. Let's work with what we have.
So we are calling on to these teachers to become parents, if you will. Don't look at yourself as a man or a woman. Just be a parent. You see something wrong happening, just go ahead and talk to the child. All right, Rosette, let's talk about another issue. Quality of the teachers. By 2000, those teachers who had minimum quality academic qualifications for primary were around 85%. When we moved around 2019, that number did drop to around 65%. And of course, the pandemic and so forth. The teachers have not been exercising their skills for the last 2 years. Rusty would be an understatement. So you and I know very well we need to up the quality of our teachers. So what is being done in that regard? And do you think this is a factor that might actually dampen our resolve to ensure a full recovery? Teachers that are not of quality.
Yes, actually, the sector has already thought about that, and we have plans, because we have also realized that we've lost 2 years. So the Ministry of Education is coming up with an accelerated curriculum.
Yes, Rosanne.
So for the teachers to be able to deliver that curriculum, we need to do retooling, and that is what we have started during this period as we prepare for reopening. We have started retooling our teachers to be able to fit within. But I wanted to build a case on what Marlene was talking about.
Go ahead, Rosette.
On the issues of learning and how children have actually rusted and cannot pick anything. I think as a country, for recovery, not just recovery of education, we need to go back and think about the programs that we had those days, the functional adult literacy programs in this country. Because the reason as to why some children have not been able to learn during this period, it's because the parents have not appreciated the importance of education. So you may not be knowing what the child is learning, but being able to create that time, being able to provide the basics, for instance, a pencil and a pen, and ensuring that there is that time when we are concentrating on learning what has been provided to us. That is what we want as a country. And for us, as we think strategical on recovery, can we revive the functional adult literacy programs in our communities?
Well, Rosette, everyone is asking the $64,000 question. Schools opening anytime soon? Well, vaccinations are largely lagging. Only 2.2 million vaccinations. The president had said if we can actually surpass 4.8 million vaccinations by November, we could see post-secondary institutions reopened. January, we could also see the whole full reopening of the whole country. But then only 2.2 million vaccinations have taken root out of 4.8, nearly 5 million. Looking at how we are lagging on vaccinations and other factors that you mentioned, we do not know how many teachers we did lose during this pandemic. So negative as they are and put together, well, are we going to see a full reopening of the education sector?
I think we need to be hopeful as a country. What I would encourage our teachers, because now reopening is largely dependent on them being vaccinated. But when you look at the statistics that came out yesterday, I think 0.9% of the teachers have been vaccinated. So my call to the teachers is let's go for the vaccination so that we see our schools reopening and have our business back. So I think that is where we need to really emphasize. But also seeking being able to provide information to the communities. The children are coming back. It should be the teacher to really create this awareness to the parents of what is expected in this challenging situation. The parents should also be aware that as we are bringing back the children on a constant basis, they need to have masks, because we are going to live with these masks for some time. So the parents need to prepare themselves to be able to provide the masks, continuously support hand washing. That knowledge can be generated from home, and it is not happening. And I still think that the teacher in the community can be able to talk about such.
Let's also talk about the structures, because largely students or learners are not going to be studying under trees. If you're talking about private institutions, largely, taking over secondary institutions, which are at 61%, then primary level at 58%. So you do know these players have been selling off their schools or premises because they were grappling with so many loans. So where are we going to absorb all these learners? If I was going to Katikamo primary secondary school and it largely closed, we were like 5,000 students or learners in there. What would happen to us if other people are also suffering the same fate? Aren't we actually at the bad position to fully reopen the education sector? The private institutions lagging behind.
I think, yeah, that is a very big challenge, but I think we should first of all make sure that the government schools are full. That is the first thing.
Government schools are already full.
Yes, they should be full to capacity. In some regions, by the way, you find that private schools have been having many learners, and this government institution does not have learners. So, and
government should absorb these learners from private institutions.
First absorb. That is why I said that we need to do a comprehensive study to really look at these issues. What are those schools that have been sold off? How many teachers we've lost? How do we move from one level to another? Studies that we should hold now, not tomorrow or near the reopening. As a country, there is a lot of work that we should be doing during this time. And I'm glad to inform you that some of this work is already started. It has already started. Government has had efforts. We are trying to construct new schools. We are going to have over 300 new secondary schools. That is already an opportunity on the side of government. We are trying to see that we map out our stakeholders in the private sector to know where they are, what are the challenges, so that we can be able to address the challenges as we think about reopening. So there is a lot of work that we are doing as a sector to make sure that we try to address, much as the budget is still low, but we are working within the resources that are available to make sure that we fit in.
Marilyn, another challenge that might dampen the resolve of ensuring a full reopening could be failure of these institutions, public or private, to ensure social distancing. You would agree. This was the major problem when we reopened institutions the first time. Many couldn't actually ensure social distancing. You had private players within the institutions who were saying, for us, not only are we going to continue with the same number of students, even the curriculum will remain the same. Go ahead.
That's a big one, I guess.
Max, okay, creating more room for the learners so that we ensure social distancing. Isn't it crucial?
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a public health concern, and people will not want to send their children back to school tomorrow if they get sick. If there's even one case, everybody will close up again. So ultimately, I think that the stakeholders all have to just, we all have to just agree and be a little bit creative. We can't go back to school as it was in 2020 in January. It's not the same. So if you have to utilize your fields, those who have, take the learning outside. Try to think of shifts. Some of these huge schools were already working on shifts. They had the morning shift, they had an afternoon shift. We just need to be flexible and be creative and innovative. Otherwise, there's just no way around it. If you get a case, you will have to close. No teacher wants to come to a school where there's a case. No parent wants to send their child to a school where there was a case. So it's important that all of us do our bit to work around the constraints that we have, but also be practical, pragmatic, and be creative. I'm sure the students will be happy to spend a day out in a different room.
The beauty, Ministry of Education is working closely with Ministry of Health.
Yes, Rosette.
And we have a plan of at least attaching a health officer on each of our schools to make sure that we continuously monitor what is going on in our schools. So I think if we work together with the structures at the school level, like the management committees, they should be on the ground to monitor the safety and security of our children, especially during this period.
All right, acquaintance with what the Aggakhan Foundation is going to be doing now moving forward, hand in hand with the government to ensure a full recovery of the education system, and also what should government be doing to actually ensure the same is realized, the full recovery of the education system. First of all, what our people are doing, Aggakhan Foundation, and then what government ought to be doing to ensure a full recovery.
As I mentioned, we supported the back-to-school packages. We are working with
future projects.
Yes, currently these are ongoing.
Oh, yeah.
So the investments already began, some last year, some this year. We're supporting, again, teachers with innovations within the classroom, supporting them to be creative, come up with solutions. If you have a bigger classroom, as you're mentioning, they're likely to be bigger, or whatever that is. How do you improve your learning? How do you improve whatever it is that you've been delivering? Working with the school management committees, what are the challenges that are you facing? We're providing some response funds and innovation funds to help to equip, provide the equipment that you need, or provide the resourcing that you need. At the end of the day, you need resources.
Indeed.
She mentioned that. The government is making a contribution. We, other stakeholders and partners, are making a significant contribution to that. We're working with the communities as well.
I see.
At the end of the day, we've realized that education is not for the schools. It's been for the community, for the parent, for everybody involved. Again, providing those community response funds and innovation funds to ensure that these girls go back to school. If you realize that, I mean, we've seen the numbers every day, thousands and thousands of girls out of school. Are we going to leave all the investments that we've made in girls' education to just collapse? Are we providing support to get these girls back to school, those who want to go back? We're providing that support for that return to school. As I said, we're providing the hardware in the schools, making sure that when they arrive at class, the services, hand washing are there, the soap is there, the masks are there. So we're providing some of that support to the schools and the center management, the school management committees, and those resources for the ECD centers which have been closed for all these years. For example, equipment has collapsed, the classroom is not what it was. We're trying to provide that resource to revamp these facilities and encourage the communities to come back. We're also doing some back to school sort of rallying and that communication, the messaging in the community saying, please we are getting ready for reopening. Can you bring these people back to school? The schools will be ready, the schools will be safe, providing that information. It's important to sensitize so that people can be confident that the children should return to school.
Here's another group I've been clamoring for to actually make sure that they return to school. The young mothers who got pregnant during this pandemic, in their thousands. Many have been lucky to actually go through a clean birth. Some were not that lucky because their bodies were not ready. But then those who pulled through, how do we ensure that they come back to the fold, the education system? Rosa.
Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, I've already said that we have prepared our senior women and men teachers, and during this period we have actually developed some guidelines for them on how they can be able to perform their roles. So that has already been done. But for girls that got pregnant,
yes,
we have also developed the guidelines for prevention and management of teenage pregnancy. And within those guidelines, we are supporting re-entry of the child mothers. But like
what criteria would they follow, parents and the learners in that category?
That is what we are saying, that as they are coming back to school, the school should be able to prepare to receive. This child needs guidance and counseling. So that is why we are preparing our teachers. But before she even gets back to the school, the community should be able to support, the family should be able to support. Initially it was one child. It was one child, but now it's a pair. The other one needs to go to school, another one needs milk. So the parents and the community should be able to support, and that is why we said that as we are having all these interventions of recovery, we should work together. These families that have such girls should be linked to economic empowerment programs under government so that they can be able to take care of this baby that has also joined the family and also has their own rights. But we're also saying, as this girl is coming back, we need to link her more to other services. We don't want her to get pregnant again. So that is why we are saying linking our health education institutions to health facilities will help us to address some of the challenges that these girls are coming back with. And we are talking about only pregnancy.
Indeed.
Our children are also now HIV positive.
I hear you.
So these are issues that, as a country, recovery requires all of us to invest resources, to invest energies, to be able to address all these children, the issues that we are getting back with.
Because the fact that they did get pregnant also means they didn't have access to contraception and also other medical services, health services to do with PEP. The PEP drug would have actually prevented HIV contraction in that regard. But since they did not have information that they could even stop a pregnancy before it develops, so many of these issues took center stage. Information dissemination is going to be important among our teenagers. Would you agree, Rosette and also Marilyn?
Yes, and to that effect, again, during this period, we are coming up with a life skills toolkit. And this toolkit, we hope to engage these young people, those that have come back with challenges, but also those that have not yet been affected, to make sure that we talk about these issues, we empower our young people with the life skills. They can be able to prevent some of these vices from happening. So there is a lot of work. Much as the schools are not open, the sector is really very busy.
So where should a high priority be, Rosette? Should it be on protection issues or learning? Which one should come first? Remind, these are not normal times.
They are all priorities. Indeed. We cannot have children learning when they are not protected, and we cannot have protection when children are not learning. So we should be able to balance. And that is why we are saying, as we are doing this as education, we need to work with others to make sure that protection issues are handled and also make sure that there is continuity of learning.
Marilyn, you wanted to react to that?
Yes, as Aggakhan Foundation, we are making a very considerable investment in adolescent sexual reproductive health.
Nice.
We are empowering young women. We're really targeting them with tools. Actually, we call it in their hands. We are giving them information, access to services that are youth-friendly. Many service providers will say, what are you doing here? You're too young. Can you go away? And they're still going to go away and engage in unprotected sex. So we're providing them with, we're really mobilizing the community community, empowering service providers provide youth-friendly services, empowering the girls. We're working with girls and boys groups to give them this information so they can make the right choice to postpone, or if they choose to engage, they can engage safely, they can access appropriate services, they can access counseling. So we're working together with some of our partners like Triggerize, who are providing the technology platform that allows us to track this behavior, because if they say if you don't measure it, it's not happening or you're not doing it right.
No doubt.
So we're providing that access to services, so working with the service providers, the pharmacies, the health centers, private service providers, so that they can provide youth-friendly services. We're working with parents groups, because parents are also a big part of this challenge. They say my child is too young to know, but they're already active.
They're already active, and they're getting it on the internet.
Exactly. So empowering these parents to appreciate and understand when it's the right time to talk to this young person, and it's better to inform them, be the source of the right information, rather than have them go out there and get misinformation. So we're investing quite a lot in adolescent and sexual reproductive health. It's a critical piece. You asked what comes first. Is it the safety? Is it the education? You need both. And ultimately, a person who is safe and healthy can always go back to school.
Indeed.
But if my life is ruined, it will be a lot of work to get me back on track.
Indeed, or if I'm 6 feet under, there wouldn't be need for an education for me. So the safety and protection really go hand in hand. So what are your final thoughts, Marilyn Mungereza, on this? As we all wait for a full reopening, any words of encouragement, hope for the teachers who are watching this show, the parents and the learners are like, of course, this is their day, the teachers. Any word of hope for them before I let you go?
Teachers, on behalf of all parents, just to say thank you. We appreciate you. If we took you for granted before, I'm pretty sure now we don't. I have 6-year-old boys at home, and spending 5 minutes trying to teach them something is it's maddening. So you appreciate that teachers have a very critical role that they play. I think everybody, the parents, have valued your contribution to our children. We're saying we need you. Please come back. Don't give up. If you've found another activity, it can be, as we say in Uganda, a side hustle, but please, the classroom needs you. At the end of the day, we work for two things. You work for money, but also there's self-fulfillment. I think that education is a very fulfilling, and teaching is a very fulfilling career. So we encourage you, come back to your vocation. We need you. The country needs you. And we appreciate the challenges, but we hope to see you again in the classroom. We'll be there supporting you as partners, as the community members, as parents. We promise to
please get back to the fold. Your country needs it. It's more like that warlike situation where you call on to the soldiers out there to come to the field and support their nation and protect its sovereignty. Right now we are calling on to the teachers to come to the field, to this war zone, and protect the recovery of the education system. Why preempt the last parting shots from the Minister of Education? Please, Rosette, go ahead. Parting shots from you.
Thank you very much. For me, my call to the teachers is this is a noble calling.
Amazing.
Please come back. Our children need you, but also to encourage you that all is not lost. This period has also presented for us opportunities. Initially it was the chalk, and now we are going digital. So we should take advantage of the opportunities that have been presented by COVID, so that we are not out of, because this is the era we are going into. So our teachers should be prepared to move with the new era.
A more futuristic question before I let you to go. 15 million teachers are needed to ensure a full recovery of the education system at least by 2030. Do you feel like Uganda is at par to actually reach these goals?
We can reach this goal if we work together, and that is why Aggakhan is putting more emphasis on adolescent development. We want these young ones to be able to go and enroll in teacher training institutions, so that we don't want to lose them at this level. If we lose them,
attract them back.
Then we will not have teachers in the future. That is why the work we are doing of ensuring that young people remain in school and be able to take this direction of teaching is a good cause. All
right, such a conversation is really pertinent. Thank you very much, Rosette, and also Marilyn, for coming through to speak to us. The Aggakhan Foundation and also the Ministry of Education and Sports on such an auspicious day for our teachers, World Teachers Day. Thank you too for coming through.
Thank you for having us.
And of course, we are talking about the persistent teacher gaps that could jeopardize a full reopening of the education system. Teachers are at the heart of the recovery, and we need to ensure that we work on their livelihoods, and so that we ensure a safe and full reopening by, well, January of 2022. The president says in November of this very year we could see a reopening of post-secondary institutions if we could have 4.8 million